As we've discussed in previous videos, Max Steel has a lot of enemies. From the deranged Toxon to the awesome Extroyer and the diabolical Machino, Max has to face a lot of different challenges thanks to all of his different villains. But of course, it all started with the original arch-nemesis villain of Season 1, Miles Dread. Miles Dread was one of the original Entech founders, but he turned against his colleagues once he grew a greedy desire to harness Jim McGrath's turbo energy. In order to do this, he created a siphoning device capable of absorbing Taconian turbo energy. And he first tested this siphoning device during Jim's first test of the Turbo Star. And unfortunately, that didn't go well for either of them. The resulting explosion actually embedded the siphoning device into Dread's body, which somehow rewrote his biology, meaning that his body actually needed turbo energy to survive. Don't ask me how that's possible, because I don't know, but that's apparently what happened. Luckily, the explosion of turbo energy caused by the Turbo Star malfunction actually gave Dread enough turbo energy to last for 16 years. But of course, nothing lasts forever, and eventually he found himself running low and in desperate need of more turbo energy. And that, of course, is where our boy Max comes into play. Being a half Taconian hybrid that generated potentially even more turbo energy than his father did, Max was a perfect source of energy for Dread to feed off of. And during the 16 years since the Turbo Star explosion, Dread created a battle suit around the device embedded in his chest, capable of absorbing and using turbo energy. Now, it is important to note that when Dread absorbs turbo energy, it doesn't actually stay as pure blue Taconian turbo energy. Instead, it actually changes into red negative turbo energy. And that's not a headcanon either. Dread literally refers to it as negative turbo energy in one of the Season 1 episodes. It's unclear as to what exactly happens to transform turbo energy into negative turbo energy, or what the difference is, but potentially, if Dread is anything to go by, negative turbo energy might actually be more powerful than regular blue turbo energy. It could also suggest that it's not actually possible to siphon pure turbo energy and keep it pure. Like, if you try to take pure turbo energy away from its source, it's always going to be tainted somehow. And no, I am not counting the bullshit that happened in Season 5, because I don't even count that as canon. Yeah, fuck you, Terrorax. Dread managed to do the whole anti-turbo energy thing years before you did. But to be honest, it doesn't seem as though Dread had any problem with it not being pure turbo energy, as negative turbo energy, like I said, almost seems to be more powerful than regular turbo energy. It's seemingly more powerful, and it's definitely more destructive, which made it absolutely perfect for Dread's purposes. Now, what we're going to be talking about in today's video is all of Dread's negative turbo modes. Now, whether you can actually call them turbo modes or not is sort of up in the air. I'm kind of inclined to disagree with the notion that you can call them that, because Dread sort of just has a base mode and then two different upgraded versions of that base mode. He doesn't have different modes that do different things like Max does. So I think they're really just transformations and not turbo modes. But regardless, I'll probably still call them negative turbo modes just for simplicity's sake. Make sure to subscribe and join the Max Steel unofficial Discord down in the description down below, and without further ado, let's get into it. Dread's first negative turbo mode, which is really as base mode as it gets, debuted in the second episode of the entire show. After capturing Max and absorbing some of his turbo energy, Dread finally powers up his battle suit with negative turbo energy.
Thanks to you, my new best friend, Miles Dread will truly be a powerful man once more.
And the result is that somehow the battlesuit actually makes Dread taller and more muscular than before. Not to mention giving him enhanced strength and also giving him the ability to shoot negative turbo energy blasts from his hands, which can also be used for flight. Dredd's default battle suit is a black metal suit with accents of glowing red and a fuck ton of sharp edges, and it also had the siphoning device built into his chest. And as I mentioned in the Extroyer video, Dredd's suit really lends itself to Dredd being the anti-Max Steel, as Dredd's battle suit is basically the complete opposite of Max's base mode. Max's base mode is white and blue and all of the edges are rounded, whereas Dredd's is black and red with all of the edges being sharp. It's a clever bit of design, and like I said, it really demonstrates the whole thing about Dredd being the anti-Max Steel, even though I still think that that title is better held by Extroyer. Now, it is worth noting that within the first 2 episodes, before he absorbs Max's turbo energy and powers up for the first time, we do actually see an unpowered version of Dredd's battlesuit, as well as a partially unmasked Dredd. But after he powers up for the first time, we literally never see his face again, apart from a few flashbacks in seasons 2 and 3. Now, in the next episode, episode 3, we actually see that Dredd's battlesuit actually has a few imperfections. The major one being that it can actually be overloaded with turbo energy, causing Dredd to basically explode, which is how Max manages to overpower and defeat him during their first confrontation. But unbeknownst to Max and Steel, Dredd actually survives this encounter and returns in episode 5. During this episode, Dredd and Nort are trying to figure out the true identity of Max Steel, and after mistakenly identifying Butch as being Max Steel, thanks to Butch taking the credit for Max saving the school a couple of times, Dredd briefly learns that the true identity of Max Steel is the son of his old colleague, Jim McGrath. And during their battle in episode 5, Dredd reveals that he's modified his battlesuit so that there is now no such thing as too much turbo energy. And he demonstrates this by absorbing a great amount of Max's turbo energy and transforming into his first upgraded transformation. Okay, hi everyone, this is Prince during editing. Embarrassing little mistake here. I actually discovered while editing that I'd actually made a mistake during this video. During the initial recording, I said that the first time we saw Dredd's first upgraded transformation was actually in episode 5. That is actually not true because it turns out we actually see his upgraded transformation before that in episode 3. During the latter part of this episode, he uses Steel to basically absorb a tiny amount of turbo energy from people using THI devices. Don't ask me how that's possible, but that was apparently his original plan to get turbo energy before he found Max. And in episode 3, when he activated that machine, he accessed his first upgraded transformation. So yeah, apologies about that. Anyway, here's the clip of him transforming for the first time. In comparison to Dredd's default battlesuit, his first upgraded transformation is a lot more red. It's also a lot bigger and literally has negative turbo energy seeping out of it. As well as obviously a change in appearance, Dredd's first upgraded mode features enhanced strength comparable to that of Max's turbo strength mode. And he's also capable of generating giant balls of negative turbo energy to launch at his opponents. And he's apparently also capable of turning his arm into a blaster, another thing from episode 3 that I missed out on because I'm pretty certain he never did this again. Now, it should be noted that this upgrade was not permanent. It seems as though either after taking too much damage or using too much energy, Dredd would return back to his original battlesuit and wouldn't be able to return to the upgraded form until he absorbed more turbo energy. Now, this first upgraded suit would last throughout the entirety of season 1 up until the season finale. In exchange for teaming up with Elementor to destroy Entek's planetary defense shield, Makino gifted Dredd with an upgraded Makinian battlesuit.
And thanks to Machino, I've been upgraded.
This new Machinian battlesuit made Dredd more powerful than ever before. And on top of all of the powers that he retained from his previous upgrade, he also gained super speed comparable to Max's turbo speed mode. Although for full disclosure, this super speed was only seen in the season 1 finale. Throughout the entirety of seasons 2 and 3, he was never shown being able to utilize that speed again. So I guess that probably just means that the writers thought that he was a bit too overpowered. And obviously on top of all of this, he got a brand new look, and I have to say that this one is probably my favorite. It looks ominous and powerful and scary, and it's got more negative turbo energy leaking from it than any of his previous battlesuits. But then again, he only had 2 battlesuits previously, so it's not much of a comparison. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did I just make a video talking about 3 transformations? Yes, I did. However, don't worry, because we're not done yet. Because unlike Max and Extroyer, Dredd actually has more transformations as a toy than he does in the actual show. So let's briefly talk about them, shall we? Now, the first of these toy negative turbo modes isn't actually a toy, but it's actually a piece of art that's on the box of a couple of the toys. And this piece of art seemingly depicts a mixture between Dredd's original battlesuit and his first upgraded battlesuit. And it also features a glowing blue chest and a sort of weird Darth Vader looking breathing thing on his mouth. I've seen this bit of art around on the internet a little bit, and I don't really know why it was made. Because despite being used on some of the boxes of the toys, it doesn't actually depict any of the toys that were actually made. It seems to be just a random new bit of art that was created to promote some of the toys. However, it did appear on the cover of one of the graphic novels, so maybe that's where it's from. Now, moving on to the first toy that could loosely be considered a new negative turbo mode, we have Shaw Ripper Dredd. And this toy features Dredd's original battlesuit, but in silver instead of black. It's also got a blue chest core as well, and honestly, I think this one looks really cool. It's maybe too subtle of a change to act as its own negative turbo mode, but it exists and it looks cool. Now, moving on to something a little bit more unique, we have Firewing Dredd. Now, this toy was seemingly supposed to be based off of his second upgraded Machinian battlesuit, but there are slight differences to it. As you can see from the art on the box, and I have to say that I'm very glad that the box art is actually on the wiki as well, this version of Dredd's battlesuit has a lot more red on it, and it actually has some gold accents on his head. Not to mention, of course, he's shooting fire out of his chest. But I think this is enough of a difference to count as a new negative turbo mode, because if you think about Max's turbo modes, most of them look pretty similar, and I think there's enough of a difference in this to count it as a new negative turbo mode. Now, moving on to something that's very different to anything we saw in the show, we have Javelin Bow Dredd. Again, this one seems to be loosely based off of his Machinian suit, but it's actually a lot thinner and more lightweight than all of his other battlesuits. Not only does this toy feature a big-ass bow, his chest plate is purple. Now, I'm not really sure if I'm a fan of the purple color. I'm not sure if it fits with Dredd's color scheme, but regardless, it looks different, and the box art definitely looks cool, so yeah, that's there. Now, moving on to the toy pack known as Samurai Max Steel vs. Saber Dredd, we have what is undoubtedly the most unique looking negative turbo mode in the entirety of the toy line. Because this version of Dredd genuinely looks nothing like any version of his battlesuit that we see in the show, or any of his other toy versions. It's skinny and lightweight, again, it's got a completely different helmet to anything Dredd has ever had before, and although the toy itself doesn't actually have it, on the box art, it actually depicts him as having a different logo on his chest. He honestly looks like a ninja. I think this honestly looks more like an alternate suit for Max's mother than it does a battle suit for Dredd. But regardless, it's there, so I had to cover it. Now, the final toy negative turbo mode that we're going to be talking about is actually my personal favorite. Most of the others may have been a bit cooler, but I've actually left this one till last because I think this one screams negative turbo mode more than any of the others. Because this is Spike Whip Dredd, and genuinely looks like Dredd's version of Turbo Spike mode. The toy itself has spikes coming out of it that look near identical to the spikes coming out of Turbo Spike mode. And if you look at the art, it genuinely looks like Dredd's version of Turbo Spike mode. There are two different versions of this toy negative turbo mode, the first of which is in Dredd's default colors. But there also appears to be a sort of supercharged version of it in the Battle Ripped Max Steel vs. Dredd pack. And this version is basically the same, except it's all red instead of all black. And honestly, I think this one looks pretty cool as well. But that is pretty much it for all of Dredd's negative turbo modes. Obviously, there aren't that many in the show because the whole thing with Dredd is that he doesn't have turbo modes. He just has the one suit that he occasionally gets upgrades for because he doesn't have an Ultralink. If he did have an Ultralink, then I guarantee you that he probably could generate turbo modes because, of course, he has his own turbo energy. And given all of the toy negative turbo modes that they created for the toy line, I don't think it would have been such a bad idea to give him an Ultralink later on in the series and have him generate his own negative turbo modes. In fact, that's a very good idea. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a bit of a shorter one, I imagine, but it still took me almost 2 hours to film. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and go join the Max Steel unofficial Discord down in the description down below. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say, and I will see you on another video very, very soon. Goodbye, everyone.